Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. It is Friday, September 7th, 2018. Second, that running and everything looks good. All right. Tonight's topic is, well, just because no one wants World War III doesn't mean we're not going to have World War III. And what I mean by that is following. It's pretty obvious to me, and it has been for a long time now. I'm not, like a lot of people, I'm not handicapping that we're going to have an open shooting war between the United States and Russia, no matter how much the United States pokes the Russian bear. Don't see it happening. If it was going to happen, it would have already happened by now. So the fact that it hasn't happened is a testament to the good sense, temerity. What else am I? What's another good word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's terrible. I can't think of a simple word. Temerity will work. Level-headedness of both Russian and United States military commanders on the ground in Syria, because they've been fighting in close proximity to each other now for close to just about 3 years, without very much really happening between the two of us. And we're in this moment now as we approach the beginning of the Idlib operation, or the operation to finally end Al-Qaeda in Syria, that everything looks like we're on the verge of a really ugly confrontation, right? It just looks that way. We've got massive amounts of U.S. war material, naval material in the Eastern Mediterranean. The Russians are doing the same, have got the same. The rhetoric is flying hot and heavy on all sides. You've got every traitor and unrestrained neocon in the Trump administration warning the Syrians not to gas their own people, because they never have. Meanwhile, the Brits are doubling down on their retarded Skripal poisoning narrative to blame Russia for everything from global warming to Boris Johnson's bad hair. So so everything looks like we're gonna get the kind of confrontation that is the stuff of neocon wet dreams. You know John Bolton is itching for this stuff. You know Mike Pompeo is itching for this stuff, no matter how much he tries to make it look like he doesn't. But at the end of the day, when you really stop to look at the way things have been playing out over the course of the last couple of weeks, with the insane level of pushback that Donald Trump has been getting domestically, it's pretty obvious that this is where we are. Ready? Trump has no intention of starting World War III over Idlib. He's actually kept his mouth quite shut on the entire affair. If you've noticed, everybody else in the administration is running their mouth. Everybody. The Brits are running their mouth. The French are running their mouth. Notice how Angela Merkel's not running her mouth. Notice how nobody in Germany is running their mouth. Right? Nobody. But we have a massive buildup before an important moment. Right? The United States has to get out of Syria with their face intact. Okay? I was reading a couple of different articles today as I was trying to prepare for writing my weekly article for Strategic Culture, and failed miserably. So I punted and did a whole bunch of episodes for my new podcast. And I'll write that article over the weekend, and it'll be some variation on what I'm talking about right now, because it's amazing what happens when you take a shower to clear your head. Amazing. All of a sudden you can think again. So one of the detriments of working at home, if that's TMI for you. So this is where we are. We have this massive buildup. We have this massive saber rattling and rhetoric, but the United States needs to get out of Syria with their face intact. Our positions at Al-Tanf, the border crossing at Al-Tanf, and in eastern Syria are becoming more and more tenuous as time goes on. Remember, our relationship with Turkey is falling apart. The security situation in Iraq is becoming less and less U.S. friendly by the day. I was reading a couple of articles by Elijah Magnier this afternoon. He was detailing the political machinations behind the Iraqi parliamentary talks. And it's very obvious that the United States is playing for time in Iraq to keep our guy in charge. And if we lose that fight, then the most likely outcome is that the corridor, the transport corridor between Baghdad and northern Syria is going to close. And the popular military forces, for all intents and purposes, have already closed that border. And so it'll become less and less possible for us to continue to support those guys. And we've been moving massive amounts of material in there in order to try and shore those positions up for a long intended stay. So the rhetoric may be, we're not leaving Syria. And the Washington Post can talk about how there's been a 180-degree turn in the Trump administration's policy. Notice how no one ever attributes any of these quotes to Donald Trump. Notice how Donald Trump doesn't say anything about this. This is because Donald Trump isn't saying anything about this, because that's not what Trump wants. What Trump wants is to pull out of Syria. So we have all that happening. And as North on 60 just reminded us on YouTube, there was a big summit today between Iran, Russia, and Turkey. And I'll explain what happened. Now, Erdogan just sat down with a top-ranking American official. I don't think it was Pompeo. I think it was somebody else recently. So the U.S. and Turkey had a talk. And Turkey basically presented the U.S.'s position on this, which is, don't attack. Let's try and get Harir al-Sham to, basically al-Qaeda, to lay down their arms, which they're not going to, and all of this stuff. It's not going to happen, right? All of Erdogan's demands, which are basically the U.S.'s demands, they're not implementable in any way, in any more practical sense than the Minsk II protocols could have been implemented the day after they were signed. As a matter of fact, these are demands meant to never be implemented. Okay? Because the United States still thinks at some level that stupid neocons, the incredibly insane and moronic and fucking annoying neocons who infest the Trump administration like John fucking Bolton, refuse to admit the fact that Iran is going to continue to double down on supporting Syria forever. They just don't get it. They just don't get it. And so they think that they can play a war of attrition in a scenario where they're not the ones playing for time. The ones who are playing for time are the Russians, the Syrians, the Iranians, Hezbollah, and the rest. Because every day that this goes on and it's unresolved is another day that everybody de-dollarizes their economy. So Erdogan effectively was able to scuttle these talks and not have anything of substance come out of them. A mealy-mouthed, weak statement was made about, well, we hope that we can come to some kind of peaceable agreement. Not going to happen, because the Russians are already bombing Idlib. Oh, by the way, talk's cheap, whiskey costs money. The Russians are already bombing Idlib. So don't worry about it. It's already happening. So now it's put up or shut up time. I don't think RB Tools says the Turks are playing both sides against the middle in hope of picking up the crumbs. That I agree with. But I do not agree that Trump is silent because he is afraid. I don't think that at all. I think Trump doesn't have anything to say on the matter because he's letting this play out. In the same way that he shut up in the weeks before things broke his way on North Korea. No, it's not a new hat. So at the end of the day, the operation to take back Idlib is going to be messy. There's no way around it. Just like the operation to take back Aleppo was messy. Turkey's right in that all these people are gonna move into. All these Syrians are going to flee the fighting into Turkey, and but now they can actually flee point south because the Syrian army has, for the most part, cleared the south. Yes. So ultimately, what's going to happen here is that the Russians and the Syrians are going to root these people out along with Hezbollah. They're going to root these guys out and they're going to kill them to a man. This is their last opportunity. This is their last chance. The United States has been, every time there's been an operation to take over major territory, the Russians and the Syrians have always negotiated a withdrawal and allowed these guys to go to Idlib and relocate there. Well, now they're going to get killed. They're going to get wiped out to a man. If anything, the Chinese are going to pile on. Okay? Now, yes, it will get ugly. These are the hardest of the hardcore. You're absolutely correct. It's not going to be pretty. But it's going to happen. And the United States is going to do nothing about it, other than potentially via MI6 and the Mossad to stage a chemical weapons attack in order to justify something. But what? Because any move that the United States makes here ends up in World War III and 2/3 of the U.S. Navy on the bottom of the oceans around the world. Because that's what's on the table. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Because that's what Putin told Trump at Helsinki. The missiles are real. I have them all targeted. I have all your ships targeted. If you fuck with me in Syria, this is over. And the United States goes home with their tail between their legs, and everything around the world changes. And Trump doesn't want that. Trump wants MAGA. You don't MAGA if the United States is revealed to be a paper tiger militarily. Not saying that the Russians won't get their hair mussed, to quote George C. Scott from Dr. Strangelove. They will. But the United States will suffer the kind of defeat that will be demoralizing in a way that will destabilize global markets around the world. In the same way that the insane idiocy that we're seeing on Capitol Hill this week is destabilizing the United States politically to the point of calling for a constitutional crisis. We have John fucking Kerry, the most ineffectual politician in the history of the United States, calling for a constitutional crisis on Stephen Colbert. That's the new plan. Why? Because that's all they have. Because what they're thinking now is that they can remove Trump from office effectively illegally. There's no real mechanism by which to remove Trump from office other than the 25th Amendment. And they only get that if they can retake the House. The 25th Amendment, this is why the Bob Woodward book, this is why the op-ed in the New York Times, this is why John Kerry's out there in doing the talk show circuits. This is what's going on. The whole idea here is to now pay off that narrative that they've been building for 2 years that Trump is an idiot. Not going to work. It's not working. If anything, all it's doing is bringing clarity to the point that the Democrats and the deep state, which is effectively now revealed to be the CIA, the FBI, and everybody else who works in Washington, and all the lobbyists and everybody else, that those guys are all freaking traitors to the country. And that's not going to sit well with the highly conscientious people who voted for Trump in the first place to drain the fucking swamp. So what do they think their end game is here? That they're going to, I don't know, they're going to freaking rules lawyer their way to an impeachment? And they think people are going to stand for this? I got news for you. They all start getting shot. Because Trump has the military on his side. He does not, you don't have to worry about the spooks. Because Trump has the military on his side. The military doesn't want to be in Syria any more than Trump does. Than we want him to be. They want to come home. They want to defend the United States. They don't want to be in Afghanistan anymore. They don't want to be in Iraq anymore. They don't want to be jerking off in Okinawa anymore. They want to come home. You guys are tired. And they can read the same shit that I read on a daily basis, and a lot of them do, because, you know, they're not dumb. They know how to use a VPN. So the way this is setting up is that Trump is going to go on the offensive real soon now. He's already begun to start going on the offensive. But ultimately, nothing is going to happen in Syria other than a whole lot of chest thumping. Because chest thumping makes it look like we scared Assad into not using into using chemical weapons. Think about the narrative. April 2017. Khan Shaykhun, Trump fires off a bunch of missiles. Calls Assad an animal. April 2017, Duma fires off a bunch of missiles. 2018, later in 2018, Idlib, no chemical weapons attack. Oh, you see, we scared them into not doing it. That's the narrative. That's what Trump is going to play. That's going to be his way to save face. Mattis is on a charm tour right now in Afghanistan. Even the Washington Post called his visit to Afghanistan, quote, a surprise visit to talk with the Taliban about peace. Mattis is going over there, not that fucking retard Pompeo. Mattis. Mattis is the one who was able to secure a communications agreement with India for the first time in 20 years. Not 2 days ago. Not that fucking idiot Pompeo. Notice how John Bolton is nowhere to be seen in all this. When's the last time you heard John Bolton open his mouth? The last time John Bolton opened his mouth, Trump dressed him down. Not 4 hours later on Twitter. Pompeo's not allowed to go anywhere of import anymore where he can actually affect anything without Mattis at his side. Someone actually replied to me the other day and told me that my thesis in one of my recent articles about how it was Mattis that was going to keep everything under control was wrong because Mattis hates Trump. I'm like, what are you, a fucking moron? I mean, how far up the Young Turk's ass do you have to be to believe that Mattis and Trump don't get along? This is why the most prominent quotes from Woodward's book were about John Kelly and James Mattis, and both of them vehemently denied it. Those guys respect the chain of command. I know people who know Mattis personally, who fought with Mattis. And I can tell you that in no way, manner, shape, or form would James Mattis go against the commander-in-chief like that. And he would not go behind his back like that. He may disagree with Trump, and he may talk him down out of a bad decision. And I'm sure that he has multiple times in the past. That's what he's there for. That's his job. Faith Virtue, good evening, and how are you? And yes, you're right. It was an FBI/CIA psyop. Of course, there's no source. That thing was written by 12 different friggin' CIA analysts. It was gone over like my old newsletter, Newsmax would. I would send my copy in for Newsmax for my old newsletter, Resolute Wealth Letter, and it would be gone over by no less than 20 different people. And I'd get it back, and about 85% of my original text was there. And they would sharpen things and edit things and improve things, and they would do a great job. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't like complaining. This isn't a complaint or a grouse or anything. No, they made me look better. I was fine. Outstanding. Thank you. But that's exactly the way that thing was written by committee. That was a room of CIA analysts and psychologists and going over the whole thing. So making sure that was written in a particular style. Well, I mean, everything is written at a middle school level. You do realize that the New York Times, the average piece in the New York Times is written to an 8th grade level. Okay? The Fleisch Kincaid, you're supposed to hit an 8th to 10th grade Fleisch Kincaid score. That's just good copywriting. Anything over 10th grade, and like, dude, they're gonna think you're a Russian bot simply because the Russians don't know how to write at anything less than a graduate level. Yeah, it was vague. It was filled with buzzwords. It was all those things. It was terrible. As I said in my latest rant this afternoon, it felt like a cross between the Neocon Manifesto and a Little League parent complaining that some kid wasn't getting enough time in. Christ. I wouldn't doubt it was. No, actually, this is the best part about that. I think it was designed to be to appeal to the lowest common denominator, and Nikki Haley's not that smart to write to that level. So, kind of rules her out. So, if there's going to be World War III is going to happen by accident. It's going to be some true believer starting a fight. Because they really do believe that Donald Trump needs to be taken out of office. Authoritarian wishbone offense. Nice. Tillman. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Hey, everybody. Obama's back. You know they're desperate when they bring that guy out. Because that guy was like pushed off into the void on purpose. Because you know that he's not like running anything. That whole shadow government thing from down the street from his place with Valerie Jarrett, the monkey, and I don't care if that gets me thrown off of YouTube. Crap anymore. Because she is. I just thought the Roseanne thing was funny. Guess we have no sense of irony. All right, so I'll open it up to questions and comments and all of that stuff. That was my 20-minute rant for the evening. Now it's freeform hostility. You guys go for it. I now have to like channel George Carlin and say, this is the part of the show that I call free-floating hostility. So let's go for it. What do you guys got for me? All right, so while we're talking about that, let's think about what else is happening. While I wait for some comments to come in, let's talk about what else is happening. So the Russians announced today, so Gazprom announced, I think it was yesterday, that the power of Siberia pipeline is 93% complete. Oh, by the way, that's ahead of schedule. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline construction has been started at both ends. So the terminal in Germany and they've begun laying the pipe off the coast of, across Norwegian waters. Do I have any thoughts on the commies stabbing Bolsonaro in, it's Brazil, right? I do, actually. $50 goes a long way in Brazil. That's what I have to say about it. That's pretty obvious. It's an assassination attempt. Not kid ourselves. This was not some random ideologue socialist who just couldn't handle the idea of somebody, slightly to the right of Bertolt Brecht getting into office in Brazil. Florida governor race. I think Gillum is going to get his ass handed to him. Bolsonaro is apparently the right-wing candidate in Brazil, which makes you a card-carrying commie. CIA are just Brazilian infighting. Isn't that redundant? The Florida governor race. Gillum has zero chance of winning. Zero chance of winning. Have you seen the two Russian comics who keep calling politicians? They had Nikki Haley defend Bonomo and made a made-up country, Vovon and Alexis. It's on YouTube. No, I haven't seen that. That if somebody would like send me a link to that or put a link in the comments down below, that would be awesome. I Russian comics trolling Nikki Haley. Oh, dude, that's like whiskey time. I mean, that's like whiskey and popcorn time. It doesn't get any better than that. I'm sorry. I mean, because American comics ain't that funny anymore. Gillum's staff quit. I love it. I love it. I mean, Burt Reynolds has got a better chance of being elected governor of Florida right now than Andrew Gillum. And Burt's dead. Yes, you get to see my head. Hats off for Burt Reynolds. God, he was funny in Striptease, dude. I mean, seriously. To me, like the epitome. I mean, I've seen God knows how many Burt Reynolds movies. I mean, and the best one, of course, of all of them is The Longest Yard, because it's the truly great anti-authoritarian Burt Reynolds movie of the 70s. Oh, yeah, there's Gator and Smokey and the Bandit and the rest of them, but The Longest Yard is it, right? And, oh, yeah, Tom Petty. Yeah, so Tom Petty, we should all write in Tom Petty and Burt Reynolds on our ballots for governor this fall. But, yeah, he's good in Boogie Nights, but, dude, he was awesome in Striptease because he's just the perfect, slimy Florida politician. And if you've lived in the state for any amount of time, you've met that guy. I mean, my God, you've met that guy. It was so good. And, Carl Hyacint's a freaking scream. So, oh, my God. Greg Grockenberger. So you're still generally optimistic that Idlib won't turn into the shit hitting the fan? I was a little distracted by digging a fallout shelter during your rant. You guys have the best comments. I gotta tell you, I have the best audience on YouTube. Oh, fuck everybody else. Yeah. His name is Joe Scarborough. Name was Joe Scarborough. And we just watched Fight Club the other day, and it's even more brilliant today and more relevant today than it was when it was. FYI. If you've not seen Fight Club ever, you must watch Fight Club. It's that simple. Because Fight Club is everything we're complaining about today rolled into a little over 2 hours. Rule number 1. The rug held the room together. Wow, I did not know Polaniak was gay. Yeah, North on 60, if you have not watched Fight Club, I can't recommend it highly enough. That movie is amazing. And now understanding everything that's happening with the political left, with men, with everything, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It really and truly is absolutely. But, Buck, say what you want about National Socialism. At least it's an ethos. So, Somehow, Virginia Senator Richard Black gets it on Syria. Why can't others? Probably because he's not in the pay of the MIC. Remember, at the end of the day, the main reason why I don't think there's going to be World War III over Syria is because nobody wins in a World War scenario. They win in all of these low-level conflicts going on in perpetuity. They want to continue selling arms and funding mercenaries in Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq and Ukraine and every other fucking place on this planet that we're picking a damn fight with. That's what you want. What they want. The banks want. That's what the MIC wants. It's what the weapons manufacturers want. It's what the lobbyists in Washington want. It's what the friggin' congressmen want. Everybody wants the thing to just stay the way it is, because that way they all make money. If we start nuking everybody, nobody wins. It's really that simple. And so at the end of the day, now you have to think about knowing that Trump's proclivities and his instincts are to get us the fuck out of Syria. And, he said it just before Helsinki, and then they all lost their freaking minds and had to go ballistic and the rest of it, and double down and call Assad an animal and all of this stuff. It's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. They did it because they don't want it to end. And they know it's going to end. They know the people are tired of it. Right. Dragon M says, I don't think they want Russian hypersonic missiles sinking their aircraft carriers. Let's hope somebody has some sense there. Exactly. Because once the first aircraft carrier goes down and we have no response to it, everything collapses. Now, keep that point in the back of your head, because I'm gonna pay that back in about 5 minutes. I want to reply to some of the current comments. So so RB Tool says, Tom, you're assuming that our dysfunctional governments think logically. Think about that kind of vermin we have in our parliaments. And then Green Penguin follows up and says, yes, but there are so many useful idiots who might be true believers. All we need is one with the right power. I agree. I absolutely agree. But I also know that so many of the people who are actually in charge of turning the keys and pressing the buttons still have their humanity. And there are many, many stories during the Cold War of both Russian and I was watching the Americans the other day, and there's an episode of the Americans, I think it's in the middle of season 4, when they're talking about how they needed better radar tech. The Russians needed better radar technology because they almost started World War III because they got a false radar hit of a ballistic missile fire because of the sun bouncing off clouds, and their radar wasn't good enough to detect the difference. And the only thing that stopped World War III was the guy not turning the keys, not phoning it in. And I still think that there are plenty of people who are actually there who will stand up and say, no, that order I'm not going to fill. I really do believe that there's still plenty of those people at the grunt level, at the junior officer level. I really do believe that still. I don't think they're gone. I think those people are on Trump's side. I think they all voted for Trump. I think they'll all back Trump if the Democrats try to remove him from office on a technicality or just public opinion. I know. RB Tools, I agree with you. Russia is relatively sane. It is the present day U.S. that worries me. The Russians have been nothing but rational in every stage of this escalation. And the United States, and the more rational they are and the less they respond to U.S. provocations, the more insane and crazy they all become. And that's normal, because bullies can't stand it when you ignore them. Narcissists, the worst thing you can do to a narcissist is ignore him. I know we're not done. Ari Magoo brings up the point that we're not done with Syria even after Idlib. No, we're not. We still have the northeastern area of Syria. But the thing is that both that and the border crossing at Al-Tan are both logistically very, very difficult to defend, and Mattis knows this. Okay, that's the point. Once Idlib is done, the whole thing starts to collapse. I mean, those positions will just eventually be attritioned out. Right, the grunt levels. Yeah, Trump has the generals on his side. He has the military, the officer corps, and the rank and file on his side. He has gone out of his way to make friends with all of the first responders, police, fire, medical staff, the military. He has done nothing but praise them for their patriotism and their service to the community and to the country. And he's trying to pay them back by making the country safer, which is an argument they understand and agree with. And do you think that those people, if fucking Chuck Schumer tries to throw Trump out of office, who do you think is going to get a fucking bullet in the head? It ain't going to be Trump. Because if Trump says, fucking put that guy in jail, 12 guys will jump up out of nowhere and pick Schumer up and haul his ass off to fucking pound me in the ass prison. Because that's where he belongs. The fucking traitor that he is. The Russians absolutely do not want to start any wars. Russia is mostly Eastern Orthodox Christian, self-control, and not starting things is very deeply held belief. It's also part of Putin's plan, because Putin does understand fundamentally that all he needs is time. He is running the Tsar Peter Stolpian's playbook of, who said very famously, give Russia 20 years of peace and we will have a century of something like, and we will have a century of greatness. And the Brits and the Americans have never given the Russians 20 years of peace. And this is what Putin has been doing. He has been playing for time to rebuild Russia from the ashes of the Yeltsin years. And he needs this term, and he's going to do it. That's why the Power of Siberia pipeline. That's why the Nord Stream pipeline. It's why the Kerch Strait Bridge. It's why, at the end of the day, if the Ukrainians abrogate the Treaty of Friendship between Russia and Ukraine, the Russians will have no legal reason not to allow the Donbass to join Russia or to declare their independence and then support their independence claim for all of the actual provinces of Donetsk and Luhansk, which, by the way, is double the territory that they currently hold. And there's nothing the Ukrainian armed forces can do about that. At which point, the Sea of Azov becomes Russian-controlled territory, and there's no more crying about it. Because there's no crying in geopolitics. Midnight Sun asks the very important question of how does the CIA, FBI, etc., get away with all of this if Trump has the military on his side? Answer, they don't. Spooks start civil wars. Militaries end them. WDM reminds us that that Joint Chief of Staff General Dempsey refused to become ISIS's air force, which is why Obama did not enforce his red line with a no-fly zone after the chemical weapons attack in Ghouta in 2013. Also because David Cameron didn't join, and the Brits didn't join the coalition of the willing because Parliament told them to go pound sand. So RB2, so hold on. So Dragon M asked me, so Tom, who do you think wrote the New York Times op-ed? I think it was the Waffle House waitress. I floated that in my argument today, but I think she's too smart to write something that dumb. Oh, no, sorry. I think she's too dumb to write something that smart. And it's a really dumb piece of work. it may have been her, it may have come from her office, but at the end of the day, I really do believe that that was written by a gaggle of CIA analysts and criminal psychologists. RB Tools is gonna now have us jump the shark a little bit. How about we go out there for a minute? Allow me to be a little cheeky. What do you think the world will look like in 20 years? About the same as it does now. It'll be, if you look at it from space, it'll be mostly blue with a little bit of green. There'll be some white clouds around. It'll still spin in the same direction, and it'll still be spinning around the sun. Ultimately, I know you're asking for a more specific answer than that, but at the end of the day, the Earth doesn't give a fuck about us. As Carlin reminds us, we could blow each other up in a nuclear conflagration and the Earth would just brush us off like a bad case of fleas. Because that's what happens. So, but I think in 20 years, China will be the dominant economic powerhouse in the world. This is 2018. By 2038, surely China will be the dominant economic powerhouse in the world. The Russians will be their strategic ally. The Russian economy today will be 10 times what it is today. The United States will be probably 5, maybe 6 different countries. It will not survive China becoming the dominant economic power. Because going back to what I left hanging earlier, and we've got about 20 minutes left. If you undermine the sitting president, what undergirds the confidence of the institutions around the world? What undergirds ultimately the entire global economy? Like it or not, it's the US dollar. What gives the US dollar its value? What gives it what makes people want to hold dollars? Faith that the United States and its political and cultural institutions and its rule of law are sound. The Democrats and the opposition and the deep state and everybody else, as Martin Armstrong pointed out this morning in a blog post that everybody should read, go to armstrongeconomics.com/blog, and you'll find the one I'm talking about. You undermine the faith in the dollar and in the political institutions of the United States, which is exactly what they're trying to do by getting rid of Trump at all costs. Because they just think, well, if we get rid of Trump, everything will go back to normal. No. If you get rid of Trump, the entire fucking global economy will completely fucking shit the bed as everybody goes, holy shit, the United States just descended into fucking anarchy. The reason the dollar has been so strong was because, like it or not, we had the best rule of law on the planet. It was still pretty shitty by any objective measure of rule of law, but it was the best that there was. Because remember, at the end of the day, to win the game of global capital flow, all you have to be is slightly better than the next guy. As in, it's the old Russian proverb: you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the guy next to you. You don't have to be the fastest, you just have to not be the slowest. You don't have to be great, you just have to be better than everybody else. The dollar, Joanne, is undergirded by both what I just described and the ability of the U.S. to project power around the world, to enforce its contracts and to enforce its institutional order. But that's the rapacious part of the U.S. system. That's the part we all hate. That's the part that liberals, libertarians, and conservatives all have a fucking problem with. That's the swamp. That's the globalist neoliberal mindset. that says we need to be in charge because we're the philosopher kings and the psychopaths who deserve to run the world because we're just better than everybody else. So, thank you. I'm glad you appreciate the new background. I picked it out myself. We went to Joann Fabric and looked at like 500 different patterns, and I went, I talk about the entire world. If there was like Baku behind me, I talk about Azerbaijan. It's kind of cool to like look behind me and see places that I talk about all the time. Now, one of these days, if I can get enough subscribers, I'll be able to go see those places and then report about them directly, which would be awesome. Good evening, Thordoom. How are you? So what I really, so when you put it all together, right? When you really stop to think about it all, it's all of those things put together that undergird the dollar. And you remove Donald Trump from office in a clear violation of every constitutional precept that this country was founded on. Because they don't like him and because they want to have their fucking cookie like a bunch of spoiled fucking children. The rest of the world is going to go, fuck that. I'm not holding my capital in the United States. At least the Chinese, quote, make the trains run on time. These people are Looney Tunes. That's what's happening. That's where we're sinking. That's why the Democrats' descent into madness is so dangerous. That's why, and by the way, this is what George Soros wants. He wants the United States destroyed. He said it. He's made it abundantly clear. So if they are successful in removing Trump from office in the next 3 to 4 months, which is the dangerous period right here, if he survives this, fuck it, they're done. I think he's going to win it. I don't think they've got the horses to pull this off. But I could be wrong. I mean, I don't want to be wrong. But if I thought I was wrong, I would say, that's not really what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing Trump having, from the beginning, make very, very smart, long-term strategic choices, which put him in a position to deal with this. How is it possible that Soros is still alive? It's all the same club, and we're not in it. Because hate keeps you alive for a long time. That's why. Emperor Palpatine was never gonna die. Unless Darth Vader killed him. Hate is a sustaining thing for these people. How is Hillary still alive? So, there you go. The midterms will decide Trump's destiny. Absolutely. Yes, RB Tools. RB Tools' point about precedent is exactly what Martin Armstrong was talking about this morning. His biggest worry is not that they get rid of Trump, is what comes after Trump. No one competent will ever run for office again. Rule by men. And once you don't have rule of law anymore, and honestly, our court system has broken down to the point where we don't have rule of law anymore. And that's a problem. It's a real problem. It's still somewhat better than everybody else, but I got news for you. Places like Russia are improving rapidly. Putin understands the power of the rule of law. He believes in the rule of law. Like, to a scary degree. Fuck Bill Browder and the rest of those assholes who will tell you otherwise, and all the people who are so fucking gaslit over Putin that they don't understand that. Go look at Putin's record. Go listen to the way he talks. Go listen to his speeches. Go look at what he's actually done. Go look at his record, and you'll see a man who governs as if the rule of law is the only thing that matters. because he understands fundamentally that in order to bring Russia from the brink of chaos and collapse to where it is today has been bringing the rule of law back to Russia. And that's going to improve every day. And as the Russians improve, and as the Russian life expectancy improves and their economic opportunities improve, crime has dropped to the point where they just closed 93 prisons the other day. The prison guards were all in an uproar because they were out of work. Well, cry me a fucking river, for Christ's sake. Go get a real job, you fucking assholes. Yes, there's Trump out there. No raise for the feds. Exactly. You don't like it? Tough shit. You already are overpaid. Do your fucking job or go home. Go get a real job. Go work for a living. No offense to anybody who's a government employee. I've been one. I know how much I worked. And I worked my ass off. And for a government, in the 5 years that I worked in government, I got news for you. I worked more than everybody else in my office combined, and I still was the laziest guy that would have been the laziest guy at the company I worked for before I took that job. Nobody sees waste like a government employee. Nobody sees sloth like a government employee. With his eyes open. Yes, the United States is starting to look like Russia in the 90s. The no rule of law is coming. How long before Americans figure out going expat and the brain drain starts here? Not very long, user 13. I'll tell you this. And I want you all to think about this carefully. And I flirted with this idea. Haven't done it yet. I still have family that I have to take into consideration. But we're coming into this phase where the dollar is going to be incredibly strong. This is the phase of your life where this is the last opportunity where you're going to be able to, over the course of the next maybe 2 to 3 years, where the dollar is going to buy you the most amount of is going to be worth the most amount of capital outside of your own country, where you're going to be able to lay claim on assets overseas that are far in excess of the type of assets that you can command now. And so if there was ever a time to expat, it is during this period of upheaval. And it's during this time of the strong dollar. This is what you do. And if you can't expat, then you seriously start considering diversifying your savings into alternative currencies. Or at least alternative bonds, but not right now because we're still way too early in the game to do that. You're talking about assets, right? You want to hold on. You want to be in dollars for the next 2 or 3 years, but once that peak happens, you want to get out of dollars like fucking that. Okay, you want to be in dollars and you want to be in gold. Now, gold, unfortunately, you won't be able to take across a political border. Most countries will not let you leave the country with gold or come into the country with gold. They've shut that shit right down. That's not possible. So you're going to have to move your money cross border. And I would recommend cryptocurrencies personally, but it's me. But there it is. No offense, Tom, sounding like one of those born again anti-government televangelists. Well, I am a hardcore radical libertarian. So the Republicans will maintain the Senate and have a better than credited chance of maintaining the House. I agree with you, Rocket Man, completely. Greg Rockenberger, I pulled the expat trigger, sitting pretty in Cambodia while this shit works itself out. Seemed like a great idea, and the money goes a long way. You're actually in Cambodia? Wow. I actually worked with a guy in Vietnam and an expat American who was living in Vietnam and Cambodia as well. We did a lot of work together back in the 2012, 2013, and 2011 to 2013. Yeah. I mean, I've heard great things about, if you're an American who doesn't want to learn another language, Chiang Mai, Thailand. A lot of American expats. I know that Green Dragon's been to Thailand. They can tell you all about it. So Thordoom, I'm serious. When this breakdown in U.S. Comes, can you imagine all the oligarchs running around, all the alphabet agencies working for the highest bidder? Russian in the 90s will be nothing compared to us. Yes. Is I Yeah, I mean, I've heard nothing but great things, and it's a it's without a doubt it is a um, I'm sure it's a culture shock, but it is like everything else. People are just people. Once you get past like the superficial stuff and the cultural differences, and you learn how to speak the local cultural language, not necessarily the physical spoken language, and you learn the customs and you learn what is and is not offensive, people are just people. I'll just want to have kids and live a good and decent life, and people are just people. So the major argument in favor of the U.S. starting World War III is that every other foreseeable time in the future will be worse, since we are declining relative to the other great powers, and therefore we should bring them down with us. Is the U.S. headed towards a recession? Not for a little while yet. Not until the dollar is much stronger than it is right now. Is the U.S. a declining power? Yes. I read an article today about how JP Morgan is talking about the next crash and the Fed needing to bail out the stock market. But they're afraid of the pitchforks if a bailout like that was done because of the equity moment. That's not going to happen. The next time that there's a financial crisis, the central banks are going to be the ones that need to be bailed out. And that will happen via the IMF. And then the IMF will fail. And then there will be a global gold standard, some form of gold cover call. But that's a couple of years off yet. Talk about that. Let's deal with the fact that we're going to have a sovereign debt crisis in Europe. That's the important. The Fed is not going to intervene to bail out the stock market. The Fed is raising interest rates because they do not want to be blamed for a stock market bubble. So that guy's got it all wrong. The Fed is raising rates because they see the stock market as a bubble, because they see low interest rates and they believe in the wealth effect and the funneling of all of that cheap money going back into an overvalued stock market. So they don't want to be blamed for a stock market bubble like they were in 1999, the dot-com bubble, in 2000, the Y2K bubble. So that's why they're doing it. At the same time, they also need to raise interest rates in order to start bailing out all the friggin' pension funds across the United States that are horribly in arrears. Want to make a special note here. We have crossed 31 people watching concurrently on YouTube at the same time. This has risen steadily throughout tonight's broadcast, which is a record for this broadcast. So that's very cool. Thank you very much. Sorry I wasn't here on Monday, but fuck y'all. I was playing games over at my friend's house. It was Labor Day. Thinking about moving this to 8:30 or even 8 o'clock on Fridays. 9 o'clock is just a little too late because I want to be able to spend some time with Camille before she goes to bed on Friday nights. So there you go. All right. We are at 58 minutes, so we're getting done real soon here. Ari Magoo, big fan of Ron Paul's anti-war stance, not so sure about his economic ideas. It's the economic ideas that make the anti-war stance work. Heartily recommend then, if you're unsure about where Ron Paul's ideas come from, then I heartily recommend that you read Sir Murray Rothbard, who are probably the most accessible of the Austrian economists. I also recommend Gene Callahan's Economics for Real People, Harry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson, along with Rothbard's What Has Government Done to Our Money? The Ethics of Liberty. And if you're really in for a treat, Man, Economy, and State. I liked Trump during the primaries, but the thing I hold against him is that his decision to fill his cabinet with neocon pawn scum. Why do you think he surrounded himself with neocon rats? Because that's all that's fucking available, and he had to pay back Sheldon Adelson to stay in power and to keep the neocons off of his tail for a little while. It's either that, it's either make a deal with the devil with one. It's make a deal with the least odious devil at this moment in time. And right now, the Democrats are completely off the rails, and so kind of allowing the neocons to run wild while subverting them in the long run and knowing that they're going to collapse, that their policies will collapse, I think is what Trump's plan has been from the beginning. And I think that's just the way it is. Rand Paul is pushing for a Fed audit. That'll never happen. Rand Paul is going to be Senate Majority Leader by the time Trump leaves office. All right. Joseph Mifsud is rumored to be dead. Wow. Okay. 59 minutes and 52 seconds. I think we're right towards the end of it. If you guys like what you heard tonight, I really appreciate everybody chiming in. It's been a great time. I enjoyed it. If you liked what you heard tonight, please give a like and subscribe down below. That would be fantastic. You can find my work over at goldgoatsandguns.com. You can subscribe to the new Gold Goats and Guns podcast over on both iTunes and Spotify. And I'm also just waiting back for confirmation on being on iHeartRadio as well. At this point, that will be mostly just audio versions of every article I put out, along with some of the ones that some of the evergreen ones that I've written in the past that I really want to have available for everybody to continue to listen to. And lastly, of course, if you like what you heard tonight and you're not currently a subscriber, I do urge you to join my Patreon over patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns. With $4 a month will get you both access to our private Slack server where you can get away from the dumpster fire that is fucking Twitter and have some rational people to speak with on a regular basis, along with getting my twice weekly market reports. And of course, you can sign up for the Gold Goats and Guns newsletter for $12 a month as well. You guys have a great night. You have a great weekend. I've got to get cracking on getting the latest issue of the newsletter out the door. You guys have a great time. We'll talk soon. And keep your stick on the ice.